So if I would be tasked to set up a project for decarbonizing until 2050. So my company wants to get to net zero in 2050. First thing, I have to check, do I already have my baseline? If I have my baseline for scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, maybe based on the year 2024, I can start right now. If I don't have the baseline yet, the first step is to create that baseline. And creating that baseline requires my in-house perspective for scope 1 and 2. So understanding my direct emissions, understanding my energy use, electricity, heating, cooling is included there. And then I look into scope 3. Scope 3 has an upstream and a downstream part. Typically, for a manufacturing company, the scope 3 upstream part related to purchased goods and services, that's referring to scope 3.1, is dominant. 70 to 80% we see. And I'm collecting this information for the baseline from suppliers, partly, wherever I get that information directly, and I'm complementing that information from my suppliers with so-called industry average data. And such an industry average data baseline is a starting point. For decarbonizing, I need over time to get to specific data from my suppliers directly. Because as we said, baseline is the first step. And then I need to have a strategy on how to get from the baseline. And the baseline is somewhere up here. And then I want to go down to net zero until 2050. And that requires decarbonization pathways for each material, for each service, for each energy used, for each material and component that I'm purchasing. And I'm starting understanding that with the biggest contributors. But I cannot neglect also the smaller ones, because zero means I really want to decarbonize everything. And so understanding this from my suppliers and how to get there is also an iterative approach. I understand where it matters most. Then I understand where and how I can decarbonize. I'm probably not the first one asking that question. So there's research out there. Sectors are doing activities like green steel, the hydrogen economy, many activities. And I have to make use of all of them and say, okay, what brings me where in terms of planning? And when I can reach what stage with what measure. So doing a plan is after the baseline, the next step. Creating a plan for a decarbonization strategy with what activities can I do in-house, what activities I can need to do with my supply chain, and where I can work with other actors in the sector maybe, because I cannot do it alone. And when I have that, I have to implement and monitor. And monitoring means I'm repeating part of that every year. I'm getting better data to see if I'm on track. I've done my baseline, maybe based mainly on industry average data. Now I'm getting specific data. Specific data, if I'm lucky and if I've done a conservative approach with my secondary data, my industry specific data can already be lower, but it might be not the case. It might be because data is not perfect. Also, industry average data is not perfect, that some of my suppliers providing me with data, and they are even higher than my industry average estimate, because it's an industry average estimate, and I don't know beforehand if my supplier is above the average or below the average. I can always hope for below the average, but it's maybe not the case. And so the monitoring brings me into a continuous controlling mode. Am I still on track towards my 2050 net zero goal? So 2050 seems to be far away. We are now in 2024. Next year it will be 25. You can say, okay, 25 years is a long time, but change requires preparation. And decarbonizing a whole industry and a whole business requires a strategy and requires really a clear way on how to do that for each and every material. So starting now with the assessment and with the planning is totally crucial, because for industry and technology changes and shifts, 25 years is a very short time period. And we need to transform fundamentally. And that's why starting now is totally necessary.